Hello and welcome to my channel, my dear friends and viewers. Today, I plan to share with you my analysis of the Australian leaders who led Australia between the year 1945 to 2025. However, as the list is long, I have divided the series into three parts. This part one will cover the prime ministers from the year 1945 to 1975 and look into the reforms and impacts, successes and failures um, in all these three parts. Um, in summary, let me further state that this part one will cover the Prime Minister between 45 and 75. And as I started my work on this topic, I did ask myself, what makes a Prime Minister truly great or deeply unpopular? Is it the reforms they pass, or the crisis they handle, or simply the trust they build? In this three-part series, I have attempted to answer and will share with you as we together trace the 80 years of Australian leadership, from the ashes of the World War II to the challenges of the 21st century. The series is not about making someone hero or blame some others. It's about understanding how decisions at the top have shaped the lives of everyday Australians through the wages, your housings, your health, and the future. We will explore the key reforms, missteps, and the moments that defined our national story. This historical reflection is with the hope that it may encourage reform oriented thinking and may inspire accountability and long term leadership vision. Leadership earns its legacy not by winning or surviving or manipulating elections, but by honoring the people's future. The vlog provides brief analysis of what made some of them popular and some unpopular among the Australian citizens. And briefly, will also shed light on what decisions made them turned out to be successful or not so successful. In this part one vlog, I will cover 1945 to 75, which is a post war reconstruction to constitutional crisis era. Prime Minister covers are Ben Chifley, Robert Menzies, Harold Holt, John McEwen, John Gorton, William McMahon, and Go Whitlam. Why I decided to stop here may be Whitlam's 1975 dismissal. It marked a historic democratic rupture. So let's begin. The leaders who built post war Australia, starting with Ben Chifley and Robert Menzies, and explore how their decisions still echo in our systems today. The first, Ben Chifley, representing Labour 1945 to 1949. Nation building reforms made him popular. So, post war reconstruction programs, he established departments of post war reconstruction focused on infrastructure, education, and industry, aimed to transition Australia to a modern economy, helped veterans reintegrate, and boosted employment, led to a long term growth and urban development. In summary, in brief, Ben Chifley led Australia through a significant post World War II reconstruction efforts. His government launched massive investments in infrastructure, housing, and education to rebuild after the war. The Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme, announced in 1949, was emblematic of this era. The policies focused on social democratic planning, widely praised at the time and in later economic retrospectives. This is I sourced from National Archives of Australia 2022. Continuing with his efforts, some of his policies attracted controversies and electoral backlash. The first bank nationalization attempt in 1947. He sought to nationalize private banks, faced High Court and Privy Council rejection, sparked public fear of government overreach, became a key campaign issue for liberals, and contributed to Chifley's his own defeat in 1949. In summary, Chifley's attempt to nationalize private banks caused a strong backlash. Though intended to create economic stability and gesture to also to ensure state control over credit, it was framed by opponents as a move towards socialism. The policy was deemed unconstitutional and ultimately cost Labour politically. Sourced from AAP Fact Check 2019 and Parliament of Australia. Moving on to the next Prime Minister, Robert Menzies, Liberal he party he represented and had a long tenure. Economic expansion and higher education. Support for home ownership and immigration, introduced home loan schemes and tax incentives, major expansion of skilled migration, populate or perish was the slogan of time, funded large scale housing developments, helped grow Australia's post war middle class, built social mobility and urban growth. In summary, Robert Menzies, or he preferred to call himself Menzies, positioned the Liberal Party as a champion of the forgotten people. His immigration policies doubled Australia's population by 1970s, and his housing policies drove a suburban boom. This aligned with Cold War fears and economic growth priorities. Sourced from Museum of Australian Democracy and ABS 2020. Continuing with Robert Menzies, 1949 to 1966, expansion of universities and science. Commonwealth scholarships were introduced and university growth took place. Expanded university access for working class Australians, created the Australian National University ANU, fostered STEM education and Cold War research and development, supported CSIRO and nuclear research partnerships, and he built long term research and education capacity. So, whatever we see today, Australia's research accolades or university educations attracting international students and has achieved reasonable ranking around the world, I think Robert Menzies takes the most of the credit for establishing or seeding the seed. In summary, Menzies was a conservative leader, but his government funded science and higher education generously. Commonwealth scholarships allowed children from non elite background to access university, boosting national innovation. These investments still play dividend today. This work of or the words I'm quoting is from University of Melbourne and CSIRO Historic Archives. Continuing with Robert Menzies, um, his anti what brought concern about his steps that he took was anti-communism and civil liberties concern. So, Communist Party Dissolution Bill of 1950 was one of the most controversial. Attempted to ban Communist Party of Australia, the second one. He was overruled by the High Court in 1951, led to a failed referendum later that year, and generated civil liberties concern nationally. He reflected Cold War anxieties more than internal threat. Though popular with many voters at the time, Menzies' attempt to dissolve the Communist Party was seen as civil liberties overreach. The High Court ruled it unconstitutional, and voters narrowly rejected a constitutional amendment. While framed as national security, it highlighted limits of executive power in a liberal democracy. That's sourced from Australian Law Reforms Commission and AEC referendum history. Harold Holt, from 1966 to 67, a short tenure, but he made immigration reforms and economic modernization. Beginning of dismantling white Australia policy started with him. Allowed non-European under special skilled visa or education program, shifted focus from race to skills, marked a quiet but pivotal break from racist policy, helped diversify workforce and global standings, laid groundwork for Whitlam's multicultural reforms. In summary, Holt made one of the first substantial move towards ending the white Australia policy by admitting skilled non-Europeans. This was a quiet but meaningful step, supported by trade and diplomatic needs in Asia. This shift aligned with Australia's changing post colonial identity. This sourced from SBS History and Parliament Debates 1966. Continuing with Harold Holt, controversy over Vietnam War involvement. He increased troops deployment to Vietnam in 1966, followed U.S. escalation policy under LBJ, faced growing protest at home, raised questions over national sovereignty, conscription expanded under his tenure, legacy remains divisive in public memory. So, in summary, other words, Holt deepened Australia's involvement in the Vietnam War, supporting United States foreign policy uncritically. While aligned with ANZUS priorities, ANZUS priorities, this decision became increasingly unpopular, especially as an anti-war movement grew. His leadership on this issue is seen as obedient to United States interests. ABC Archives and Australia War Memorial are the sources consulted. John Gorton, liberal, 1968 to 71, assertive nationalism and industry support. Support for Australian ownership of resources, promoted Australian equity in mining, media, and energy, rejected full foreign control of oil and gas, sought national identity through cultural funding, invested in Australia's film industry, asserted more independence from Britain and United States. So the person, not only the first one who gave importance to the media, Australian film industry, but the one who tried to create an independent image for Australia. In brief summary, Gorton departed from traditional liberal economics by pushing for more Australian ownership and cultural pride. His policies laid groundwork for Australian nationalism in business and arts. His funding of the Australian Film Development Corporation seeded future industry success. That's the words by Australian Screen Archives and Sydney Morning Herald 2008. His autocratic leadership style created concern, clashed frequently with senior ministers. Cabinet accused him of bypassing collective decision making, triggered internal instability within Liberal Party, resigned after tied leadership vote in 1971, undermined party unity going into next election. Summary: Gorton's personal popularity was not enough to shield him from internal party fractures. His style was described as nationalistic but undiplomatic, leading to tensions with Billy McMahon and others. He ultimately resigned after losing confidence of colleagues. It is sourced from ABC Four Corners, 1971, Liberal Party Historical Notes. William McMahon, Liberal, also Liberal Party, 1971 to 1972. Economic uncertainty and poor communication. Um, Failure to address rising inflation and unemployment, economic stagnation post boom, lacked strong vision or intervention plan, increasing industrial strikes and unrest, public services unions lost confidence, viewed as indecisive and ineffective. In summary, McMahon inherited a difficult economy and was unable to build a coherent response to inflation and labor strikes. He was criticized for weak media presence and internal party disunity. This hurt the Liberals' credibility before the 1972 election. Source: The Conversation National Museum of Australia. William McMahon, continuing foreign policy missteps and public disengagement, outdated Cold War rhetoric in Vietnam, continued unpopular Vietnam troop support, lagged behind US withdrawal trend, faced growing student and public protests, seen as behind the times in foreign affairs, alienated youngsters or younger voters and progressives. While the US under Nixon was already pulling back from Vietnam, McMahon's government seemed out of step with the global opinion. His public support for the war lost traction, contributing to the perception that Australia needed new leadership. Source: Trove Archives and Australian Foreign Affairs Journal. The last of this today's vlog Prime Minister coverage. So go Whitlam, Labour 1972 to 1975 created landmark social reforms. Medibank Universal Healthcare was launched. Introduced government funded universal healthcare. Faced fierce resistance from AMA and opposition, marked the foundation for modern Medicare, boosted access to care, especially for poor, popular despite implementation challenges. In short, Whitlam's Medibank Reform 1975 was revolutionary for Australia, ensuring healthcare access regardless of income through initially dismantled by Fraser, it returned as Medicare under Hockey. This remains a cornerstone of public health. Source: Australian Policy Online, IHW 2022. Continuing with the Prime Minister Go Whitlam, education and cultural investment. So, apart from Medicare, free tertiary education policy 1974 abolished university fees, increased university participation rate, empowered first generation graduates, boosted cultural and academic sector. Long term societal and economic impacts. Undeniably, this revolutionized Australians started moving towards higher education in during his time period. Uh, Finally, what controversies or made him a little dispopular? Dismissal and fiscal controversies, loans affairs, and constitutional crisis 1975 attempted to raise loan outside treasury oversight, fueled opposition attack over governance style. Governor General Kerr dismissed Whitlam, created national debate on executive power, still controversial and divisive historically. In other words, Whitlam's dismissal was the most dramatic constitutional crisis in Australian history. While his government made historic reforms, missteps in fiscal governance gave opponents leverage. The 1975 crisis redefined limits of parliamentary democracy. That is sourced from National Archives, ABC, The Dismissal, 2015. I will end this vlog here to resume part 2 to continue on this journey. So stay tuned and we will meet in a little after a little short break. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you soon in the next part of this series. Uh, it's all good. You take care. Bye bye from my side.